Good morning. Welcome to City Hall. Welcome to the Council Chambers. This is a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. It is May 23rd, 2006. Council meets 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and all meetings are open to the public. For those that cannot make it to City Hall, meetings are televised via cable on Channel 35 or can be viewed by visiting our website. I'd like to thank Councilmember Labange, Councilmember Weiss, Councilmember Wesson, and Councilmember Zine for being here on time. It is almost 10:05. I'd ask that Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Huizar, Mr. Padilla, Ms. Perry, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Smith, and for them to come to the council chamber so we can begin our meeting. Again, we start our meetings at 10 o'clock a.m. Thank you. Again, please come down to the council chambers. Good morning again. This is a meeting of the Los Angeles City Council. It is now almost 10:10. I'd ask that Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Padilla, I know Ms. Perry is excused until 10:15 to come to the City Council chambers. Again, Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Padilla. Madam Clerk, it looks like we now have a quorum. If you could please, this meeting is now in session. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Cardenas, Gruel, Han, Weezer, Labange, Padilla, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti, 10 members present and a quorum, Madam President.
First item of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Padilla moves, Ms. Hahn seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Those Mr. Rosendahl will move, and Mr. Smith seconds.
And Madam President, this is Tuesday and there is a flag salute on the agenda.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Labange if he would lead the flag salute this morning. Mr. Labange, I'd love to have you do the flag salute this morning. If we could ask everyone to please rise.
Thank you. Could everybody please rise and face the flag of the greatest country in the whole wide world? Place your right hand over your heart. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. Madam Clerk, next item.
Madam President, this is the time for comments from the public on items not on Council's agenda.
Okay, before we do public comment, colleagues, I'd just like to run through our agenda, so you could call those items special that you wish to. So, Madam Clerk.
First items on the agenda are items for which public hearings have been held, items 1 through 19, and for Council's information, there are 2 reports on item 19, and I believe they do not conflict, and Council can adopt both if they wish.
Okay. Any specials? Yes, Mr. Reyes.
Yes, on behalf of Councilmember Weezer, I'd like to continue item number 10 for 1 week.
For 1 week.
And the new date will be May 30th.
Okay.
Okay.
Without any disagreement, we will continue that for 1 week. Ms. Hahn?
Thank you. I'd like to call items 5 and 13 special.
5 and 13. Mr. Smith? 19. 19? Call number 19. Any other items, colleagues? 7. Okay. 5, 7, 13, and 19. Any other special, colleagues? If not, Madam Clerk, open the roll on the remaining, excuse me, 1 second. We do have a card on item number, okay, unless someone calls it special. Okay. Also, item number 15 as well. Since we do have cards, colleagues, if it would be okay, we'd call item number 10 and item number 15 special.
Madam
Thank you.
President, item number 10 was already continued for 1 week.
I'm sorry, you're correct. Those of you that are here, that has been continued for 1 week. That would be Godwin Nwunse and Neil Smith. That will be continued until next week.
And I'm sorry, Madam President, just for clarification, the items called special were 5, 11, 13, and 19?
5, 7, 13, and 19, as well as now item number 15. We do have 1 card on item 15. Okay. So, Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll on the remaining items, close the roll, tabulate the votes.
10 ayes.
Thank you. Those items have been approved. Madam Clerk, next items?
Next items, Madam President, are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration. And I believe on item number 25, there is a request to continue that matter to May 30th, which is 1 week.
Without objection, item number 25 will be continued for 1 week. Any other special, colleagues? Mr. Reyes?
Yes, items 23 and 24, 30-day continuance.
23 and 24?
Yes,
Thank
And the
you.
new date would be June 23rd.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other specials, colleagues, on those items? If not, Madam Clerk, open the roll on the remaining items. Close the roll, tabulate the votes.
11 ayes.
Those items have been approved. Next
And-
order?
I'm sorry, Madam President, on item number 20, that is an ordinance, and that will go over 1 week.
Thank you.
Do
Next
you wish to take up public comment at this time?
Yes, we'll do public comment. I understand we do not have Van Nuys. We do now. Okay, great. First speaker would be Bruce Darian. Mr. Darian? Just looking for our connection to Van Nuys.
Do we have a
Yes,
Do we have a connection?
We have a connection, Mr. Darian.
Okay,
Please begin.
great. Can you start the time all over again?
It hasn't started yet, so
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Yes, I'm here once again to talk about the Malibu Pier, the fraud and the corruption related to it. I wanted to touch this morning on the pile driving and when the crane toppled and how Cal OSHA has covered up this crane accident. The crane was operated improperly by DCA Drilling and Construction. They overrode the controls to it, which ensure that the crane would not fall over if properly used. They were picking up a 12,000-pound lead. It caused the crane to topple because it was too heavy for the amount of boom that was extended. It crashed into the food prep building, costing the taxpayers some $50,000 to rebuild, blew out the historic wall, another $30,000. And Cal OSHA covered that up because the contracts originally were tainted and falsified like those with Congressman Cunningham in the defense contracts. This Watergate-style contract that's been covered up for the last 12 years has cost the taxpayers millions of dollars. There is a connection to the city through Mayor Reardon. He does control Gladstone's restaurant and is connected with the Getty family. The Getty Villa is not in Malibu, nor is Gladstone's, nor even Pepperdine. Those are falsely projected to the public that they are in Malibu, which they are not. We can go on, as I've spoken in the past, and I'll speak in the future on the pier fraud. The piles themselves were driven improperly. They are not battered or angled on the outside pilings to give strength to the pier in severe storms. That is a defect and costing the public, the taxpayers, by having an improper construction job. The lengths of the pilings in the shore area are too short. They're sitting on bedrock instead of not sitting on bedrock. Instead, they're sitting on cobblestone, as they did not drill out the cobbles to get it down to bedrock. This causes the taxpayers additional money when the bedrock is pulled out, when the cobbles are pulled out in a storm. The fraud goes on, and the courts in Santa Monica and federal court have paid these illegal contractors for their defective and falsified contracting work, all in the name of covering up an illegal contract for restaurant services for the next 20 years.
Mr. Darian, if we could have you conclude. Your 2 minutes has ended. If you could conclude, please.
Okay, I think at some point we need to take a look at this with the City Council, and the public is welcome to go to MalibuPierScandal.com for more information on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Michael Hunt, followed by Tyrone, I believe it's Roy. Mr. Hunt?
Well, let's come on with it. Hey, camera guy, don't fade me out this time. I've been watching your show. Don't fade me out this time. You know, hey, give me my due props. Listen, City Council, it's BS. They're violating our First Amendment rights. We have a right to be down at Venice Beach. We have a right. They sold us permits to be down there. Hey, get it. They sold us permits to be down there. We were always protected under the Constitution or the First Amendment. Come on, I challenge each and every one of you guys. Let's go over to Gary Feese's office and see if it's constitutional or if it's not. Stop hating on us. Malcolm X didn't say we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Dr. King said, I have a dream, not that black folks wouldn't work or not that Negroes wouldn't work, that we would all have equal rights and all have jobs. What's up? We can't get that? And then you guys say, well, I'm a nigga now because you made me a nigga. That's right, you made me a nigga.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
We would like to ask you to have some decorum in this council chambers.
Decorum is me working. That's when you sold me the permit, that was decorum. When I paid my $25, that was decorum. What happened?
Okay, Madam Chair, I sat here and listened to you and exercised your First Amendment rights. Now I want you to hear mine. The use of that word that begins with N, I find highly, highly offensive, self-hating, self-loathing. It makes me sick, and I'm exercising my First Amendment rights, okay? I have a right to say this, to say that in front of these children. What are you trying to teach them? Do you hate yourself? Do you hate yourself?
It's called community-based.
No. You can say whatever you want without saying that word. You don't need to use that word.
Mr. Hunt.
No, you lost me there. You lost me there.
No, sir. We stopped the clock when Ms. Perry spoke. It is now your time.
Okay. Now, you made me what I am.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
You hate yourself.
Hey, wait, it's been civil rights that we always went to jail for what we believed in. Malcolm X.
You can say all that without
Thank you.
using the N-word.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Thank you very much, Mr. Hunt. Thank you. Tyrone?
I'm with you, Ms. Perry.
Yes, Mr. Wesson, before we go to the next speaker. Excuse me, yes, Tyrone, if you could hold on one moment, please. Mr. Wesson.
Thank you, Madam President and members. This council is very supportive of one's First Amendment rights. This council is very supportive of allowing anyone who comes here, we give them the opportunity to speak. But I want to go on the record is that for me, and I talked to you personally about it, you could use other words. I will not have discussions with you in the event that you use that word again. We have children that are in this audience. We have children that watch this on television. And don't think that that helps your case with us, because it does not. Now, if you want to, and we will fight for your ability to go to that podium and get your 2 minutes. But where it relates to you using the N-word, I can't handle it anymore. You did it once, I was stunned and amazed. You did it twice, I turned my back on you and I walked out. This time I'm saying that I'm not going to stand here and allow you to disrespect me, to disrespect the other members of this council, and to disrespect the people of this great, diverse Los Angeles. So you want to speak, I'll fight for your rights. But if you're going to come in here and use that word, I take issue with that.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. Sir, you have heard loud and clear from the City Council that type of behavior is unacceptable in the use of that language. Yes, so I'd like to, Tyrone, please. All members, thank you, Ms. Hahn.
Tyrone Roy here, a homeless advocate. I'll tell you, it's been disheartening to engage this seeming unresponsive process, considered to be a hallmark of democratic participation, especially when connected agent and agencies are agendized and who are given the time to sell you packages that are disingenuous at heart and mismanaged to its core. And the public is then allowed a mere 2 minutes in which to respond. Example of this transparency of disingenuous application was editorialized in the LA Times of 05/1906, in which the VOA received a substantial gift of 28 acres of land in which they had previously expressed through LASA to develop permanent housing, but in which, as soon as they received the deed, they sold the property. Now, I know that the City Council has a ad hoc committee on homelessness, and I would just like to make a suggestion that the ad hoc committee, along with the committee of the Board of Supervisors, bring these two bodies together and form a central location where all of the monies that's funneled through homeless services are centralized and organized, so that we don't have organizations getting this type property that was, in theory, supposed to be used for permanent housing, and which they have decided to instead to develop more temporary housing. I think that this body should put forth a more concerted effort and a more centralized effort if it actually wants to do the job of ending homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. Our next speaker is Andra Ehlering, or Ehlering? Oh, Andrew, excuse me. Andrew Ehlering. My apologies, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. City Council, my name is Andrew Ehlering, A-H-L-E-R-I-N-G. I am a candidate for the County of Los Angeles Board of Supervisors in the 1st District. I've spoken to a couple people here, among them Ms. Hahn, Mr. Huizar, my councilman, who, although I was here at 10, wasn't. But I'm here today to address...
Mr. Huizar is out sick, unfortunately, today.
Oh, my condolences. Speedy recovery to Mr. Huizar. On April 18th, I was at the Kenneth Hall Hahn of Administration, named after member Hahn's father. I was in the chamber of the Hall of Administration after addressing the Board of Supervisors when I was arrested by undercover deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I was later attempted to be charged by Steve Cooley's office. Mr. Cooley, our district attorney, did not prosecute me. However, Rocky Dillon, I can't say Rocky's last name, our city attorney decided to prosecute me for 3 misdemeanor charges. I believe these charges are political in nature and it's inappropriate. I spent 23 days in Sheriff Lee Baca's jail. This is also inappropriate. I do not know if the County of Los Angeles has a political vendetta against me. If so, that is inappropriate. Ladies and gentlemen of this council, I know that you cannot control the city attorney, nor can you tell the mayor what to do. However, I wish to advise this honorable council that if the city attorney does not drop these politically motivated charges, your city is exposed to liability. And that will be a multi-million-dollar lawsuit for wrongful arrest and jailing. When I was arrested, I had a shirt, and this shirt I will not hold up because there's a viewing audience. The shirt actually says, "Forgive this board." And so the shirt looks like this. I was arrested for wearing that.
Thank you, sir.
The shirt says "Forgive." Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Thank
Appreciate
you,
your
council.
comments.
Please instruct your city attorney to drop charges.
Thank you. Miguel Guzman is the next speaker.
Yes, my name is Miguel Guzman. I was born and raised in Mexico. From what I see right now, I got here a little bit before 10 o'clock. And from the people that I have seen talk right now, everybody right now is like they're doing their own things. It's like we're not even here.
Go ahead, sir. We're listening. Oftentimes,
I mean,
there's-
we are here to be heard and to be able to, for you guys to be able to do something for us. I've been protesting the Minutemen, and I've been on the marches for my people, and not just for my people, but for everybody who could live here together because we all could get along. And I would like to say that I was arrested on Sunday. It was a permit for the Minutemen to go out on the streets and do their thing the same way we did. And this guy from the Minutemen, all Confederate flag and everything, was at the marches with us on March 25th and on April 15th and May 1st. And now that it was their turn to have their march, we were not allowed to be on the street, which we did not say nothing to these people when they went to our marches. And now they arrested me and my other friend, who we spent a couple of days in jail, and I see that you guys had no right, the city had no right to arrest me just because I went on the street. If they told us to be on the sidewalk, when our permit is pulled, it doesn't say or specify who could be on the street or who won't be on the street. And from what I seen on your jails, there was drugs up in there. And I mean, I would like to say, I mean, you guys are trying to clean out the drugs, but please start in your own house. You guys have them inside. I mean, there are so many things. I have since March 25th, I've been coming to downtown LA, and I see people smoking crack on the street where kids are walking by. Please clean the streets.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guzman. Our next speaker is Monica Harmon.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce you with me this morning, the Becerra children. Victor, who is 9 years old, had to stay in class because they're testing. These children lost both parents last October when a parolee stole a tow truck and plowed into them while they waited at a bus stop. That was a horrible, horrible tragedy. And they're still recovering. They have a long road ahead of them. They live in South LA in Councilwoman Jan Perry's district. They are victims of violence. and there were a lot of people who tried to exploit this family and agencies that made broken promises. My friend Martha and I are community volunteers and got involved with this family when we saw them on television and knew that they needed the help. Newton Division police officers collected over $400 to help them pay for utility bills and other things. We are here today because we wanted to be here to personally thank Councilwoman Perry. She is one of the few that came and helped this family in their great time of need. She provided resources that they needed, counseling, grocery vouchers, taxi vouchers, better housing, all kinds of services that this family could use. I'll let the Uncle Ricardo, who has legal guardianship of the children, say something.
Thank you very much for having my family. Okay.
So we'd like to present this plaque to Jen Perry in recognition and appreciation for your dedication and commitment in helping your constituents in the 9th District. We are extremely grateful for all you have done for the Becerra family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ms. Perry, for your caring as well. Marta Cisneros, would Marta Cisneros like to speak as well? Oh, you're okay. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Yvonne Michelle Autry, and we'll give you the podium. Just one moment, Ms. Autry. And after Yvonne Michelle Autry, it'll be Michael Carrion, will be our next speaker. Welcome, Ms. Autry.
Good morning. Thank you for an opportunity to speak before the City Council. Again, my name is Yvonne Michelle Autry, and well, I understand some outbursts because I was born in this country and I feel that I have civil rights and human rights that my ancestors have fought for. But even in this day, with Homeland Security, with the Patriot Acts, with Anti-Terrorist Act, there are a lot of people that feel frustrated because we feel that our civil rights have been continually denied and it's legally justified, and we feel we have no recourse. So I understand outbursts, but it doesn't make our plight any more feasible, or doesn't make our grievances any more plausible. So I just hope that you understand why people react that way. With increased police brutality, illegal searches and seizures, evictions, racial profiling that is ignored and then justified because statistics are not really reflecting what's happening in our communities. I understand outbursts. I'm not justifying, but I understand it. I actually want to speak today on behalf of the South Central Farm. I hope that you do allow those people to keep their lands. It seems like another attack on Native people. I mean, when will this country end its attack on the original people? They live, they are organized, it's a grassroots organization, it's organic, you don't control it, but you see they're governing themselves. Okay, there is no organic food stores like Trader Joe's and Wild Oats and Whole Foods in Black and Latino neighborhoods. I know, I'm a vegetarian. So they grow their own organic foods. It's not genetically engineered, and we don't want genetically engineered foods per government order. Okay, this is by design because it pollutes our blood, and it also affects our children's propensity towards thinking, their agility, their reflexes, and this is also, this is by design. So I hope that in light of my comments and the other comments that you would not just accept, I'm sure the sizable amount of money that Walmart is giving you, but allow these people to govern themselves because you give so many awards to people that are giving out.
I'm sorry, if I can ask you to conclude.
This is natural food. Allow us to be naturalists.
Our next speaker is Michael Carrion.
I'd like the people to wake up and understand what's going on here. The city is taking the property from the South Central farmers for money. Taxes is all they want. They want money. The mayor's giving away downtown LA. They don't have to pay any taxes. They don't have to pay anything so that the city can make more revenue in the future. The people who live there all their lives are being shoved out so the mayor can have more money to spend on the Board of Education takeover. Mr. Mayor, I have a dream. My dream is that my children can breathe without the buildings coming down on them for your friends, contractors building illegal. Mr. Mayor, I have a dream that you do the right thing. Mr. Mayor, I have a dream that you stated that you do the right thing. You bite the bullet. You haven't even bit your own foot. Mr. Mayor, I have a dream. Clean up the LAPD. Mr. Mayor, I have a dream. This gentleman was speaking. Racism, Mr. Zine jumped up right now and he's huffing and puffing. That's LAPD, racial discrimination. I have more dreams, but I only have 2 minutes. The dreams that I have are very simple. Do the right thing. I don't need a speaker if you want to put it lower. The city of Los Angeles is owed thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars by parking lots. The district attorney's office hasn't collected it. Why? They're probably in bed with the same people. You attacked the South Central farmers with Mr. Zine. I love the way he did it. I didn't pull no guns. Mr. Zine failed to say that his partner pulled a gun. Mr. Zine cleared himself, but left his partners out there to hang dry. I'm always outspoken about what I feel. I've always said, do the right thing. In my opinion, the mayor's nothing but a hypocrite. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carrion. That closes our general public comment for today. If we can return to the regular agenda, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry, Ms. Perry, if I could recognize her.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
My
I just
apologies.
wanted to announce the presence of some students who are visiting here today from the 9th District. Visiting council today is the St. Columkill Student Council, grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. They are joined by Joyce Sheffy and Martha Ramos. So can we please welcome them to our City Council chambers? Yay. Please stand up, students.
Thank you very much, Ms. Perry, and welcome to all of our student guests that are here today. If we can take up our first item, number 5, called special by Ms. Han. Ms. Han?
Thank you. I know.
So are you ready, or do you want to hold it on the desk?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Go.
Thank you. I'd like to call George Cummings, who's our Director of Homeland Security at the Port of Los Angeles. I'll ask, you can come sit at the table. And I'll say a few comments about this, and then I want to ask you some questions. Colleagues, what we have before us today is a resolution supporting a bill in the Congress, one that actually has already passed through the House of Representatives and now is in the Senate. And this is, for me, a step in the right direction, finally, that our federal government has decided to make port security key to homeland security in America. And this has already passed out of the House. Again, I think a lot of what we saw in the Dubai ports debacle was something that, if nothing else, finally got this country to focus on exactly how ports are operated, exactly how they're run, and should we be nervous about what I see as a lack of real security funding for our ports. I'm still of the belief that our ports are the most vulnerable entryway into this country. And this bill, the Safe Port Act that has passed, has funding that will be spent on new port security inspectors, nuclear weapons screening, and the development of an automated system to pinpoint high-risk cargo. However, colleagues, I think the bill that passed out of the House doesn't go far enough. In order to, in my opinion, completely ensure security at our ports of entry in this country, I believe we need to have 100% screening of all cargo that enters this country. I think they need to be screened in the foreign ports where they originate. And I ask that what we do this morning is support both acts, but really emphasize the amendment in the Senate version of this bill that would institute a pilot program at 3 foreign ports so that we can further study the full impacts of 100% screening. I believe this is a step in the right direction. There are those that would say that 100% screening of all cargo would slow down commerce, but in my opinion, again, we can't afford not to really take a look at the more than 14 million containers that just come into America's port, which is Long Beach and Los Angeles. This bill also authorizes $400 million a year in dedicated port security grants, and I think that's essential that we have a dedicated grant program for port security that is prioritized based on threat, consequence, and vulnerability, because in those 3 areas, America's port, which is our own port, really ranks #1 in all 3 of those areas. Also, we need to be sure that this grant program actually gets funded in an upcoming appropriations bill. So I think our voice today on the City Council of Los Angeles, the 2nd largest city in the country, but also the city that houses the largest port in the country, which is the Port of Los Angeles, this will be an important voice that finally we can get port security to be equal to homeland security in this country. I want to ask George a couple of questions, and if you want to speak on this bill, you can. This bill requires that advanced radiation detectors be in place by 2007. Is our port ready to meet this requirement?
Thank you, Councilwoman. Before I respond, if I may, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Board of Harbor Commissioners and the Executive Director for your continuous, consistent, and aggressive support for port security. Councilwoman Hahn has sought out every opportunity to be visible, to be present, to use her office to support our objectives, and she works with us all the time. She understands what we're up against and what our challenges are, so thank you, Councilwoman, very much.
Thank you.
The requirement...
Control my time. Thank you. Go ahead.
The requirement in legislation for installing the radiation detection will actually go a long way. As you're aware, Councilwoman, U.S. Customs and Border Protection has the lead in this area of port security, and they have, over the last year or so, been executing a project to install the radiation portal monitors at the 50 terminals that are in the Port of Los Angeles and Port of Long Beach. This project is moving along relatively well. It had experienced some delays in the past, but it's actually moving along. They expect to have that completed the current calendar year, have these radiation detections in place and operational, again, both at LA and Long Beach terminals, a total of 50, and it would include both the outgates for road traffic as well as the rail outgates for the terminals.
So these, and are we projecting just screening containers which we think are at risk, or is this going to be 100% of the containers that flow through our port terminal?
The overall approach is really both. The detectors that I was speaking of will be 100%. So really, the approach that U.S. Customs and Border Protection is implementing is one that we support, and that's a layered approach where you, as you mentioned, you look for opportunities within the supply chain to screen 100% of the cargo, where you can do that without delaying the movement of goods. And then you also have a risk evaluation process in place so that you can, through smart technologies and smart thinking, identify other cargoes that you want to pull aside and put to subject to more rigorous screening. So this really will be both. It'll be both 100% for a quicker type of screening that can support a supply chain, and then some more rigorous screening for high risk.
Let me just follow up on something you said. Once we determine that a cargo needs further inspection, as many people know or don't know, at this point we are still taking those containers to Carson, a facility where we then further break them apart and inspect everything in them. Where are we in terms of this joint container inspection facility, which many of us believe should be built on the waterfront so that we don't move those containers, which we've already deemed possible at risk, on the freeways to another community? I still feel like that is a source of huge potential dangers for a lot of people who may be traveling on the freeway and unaware that the cargo next to them might be one that we've already determined could be at risk.
Yes.
Where are we for that facility? Hold my time, please.
That project, the Joint Container Inspection Facility, is moving forward. We are near to awarding a contract for the next phase of it, which is a conceptual, at 40% what's called design for the facility. And that will be at an identified location on Terminal Island. And then what we'll have to do then is seek out full funding for the complete facility, and we'll be, again, working with your office as we pursue that.
Hopefully some of the money in this act, the Safe Port Act, will be able to be appropriated for such a security item as that. Let me ask you, one of the other things the Safe Port Act proposes is this idea of worker identification. Many people also feel like there is still a need to identify people who are on our docks, truckers who are coming in and out of our terminals. Where are we in terms of this worker identification that this bill actually proposes, and will we be ready to implement that fully on our terminals?
Yes, we will. Actually, that program, the federal program, is the Transportation Worker Identification Credential. Its acronym is TWIC. That actually has just accomplished a major milestone in that project at the federal level, one that we have been working for 2 years, as you're aware. The Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, federal rulemaking, was just published last week. And this lays out this TWIC program. It puts a timeline on it, and will move it toward full implementation of regulations. This will require that every individual who is attaining unescorted access on any of the terminals within the port will require this card. The card will have a biometric just to thwart any kind of fraudulent use of the card, and it will be backed by a background check. The processes and the background check elements will be part of the regulatory process. So everybody in the United States, all stakeholders, will have an opportunity to comment and participate in this because it's a very sensitive issue. And then in the end, we'll have a good, robust credentialing program that we've been seeking.
Let me ask you one more thing. Do you share my belief that really we need to be inspecting these ports at their point of origin? In the foreign ports, so that we know exactly at that point what's in those containers?
Yes, we do, Councilwoman. And in fact, as you're aware, we continue to work in Operation Safe Commerce, which is a major federal program to test just exactly those types of technologies. Just last month, we initiated our phase 3 of that project, which is in Singapore, and we're doing exactly that. We're testing new technologies that will allow screening to occur overseas before cargo is loaded on ships. And again, we want to look toward a layered approach. We want to have an approach where we begin screening cargo at the earliest opportunities. We have visibility to the entire supply chain, and then we have capabilities within the port to also do more aggressive screening.
Thank you. Colleagues, again, I think we have an opportunity to have our voice loud and clear. The Safe Port Act is a good act in the first, it's a step in the right direction. It does not go far enough, which is why I think we ought to support the amendment on the Senate bill. But I will tell you, it's almost been 5 years since 9/11. And in my opinion, the federal government did a great job of securing our airports all across this country. But they have been very lax in appropriating the kind of dollars and the kind of federal oversight to really make these ports of entry secure for America. Our port in Long Beach and Los Angeles, of course, is close to residential neighborhoods, which is another huge threat. But I hope you'll support me, and I hope you will always have your voice loud and clear when we ask for more money so that the ports of America are safe at last. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. We can open the roll on this, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. There's one speaker card that I neglected. My apologies. If we can reopen public comment, we'll go forthwith on that. Mr. Ted Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to commend Councilwoman Terry and Councilman Wesson for their response. They certainly did not attack the content of the person's speech, but merely the character of it. And I believe if other councilmen who would like to join, they should have done that also. In that regard, I'd like to point out that they have not finished their duties. They have to understand the source of this kind of so-called outburst, this kind of name-calling, characterization of the black people in this country, comes from this man. This man is Ice Cube. He's releasing an album. As you see, he's holding Kalashnikov. That's an AK-47 in his hands. Now, you might say this is art because it says The title of the album is Laugh Now, Cry Later. As you no doubt know, in drama, we have two masks. One is comedy, one is tragedy. So maybe he's close to art. But one of the titles in the album is Why We Thugs. One of the other titles is Drugs and Guns. I have been pulling these kind of posters down throughout the black community. I've gone to Councilman Park's office concerned about the fact that the city allows these people to advertise their product throughout the black community by simply putting posters on telephone poles, lamp posts, anything else they can. They spend a lot of money on these posters. They're in 5-color and they're glossy and weather protected. But they are a public nuisance. There are 5 sections in the penal code that describe this kind of activity as being a public nuisance. This is not suppression of speech. They have ability to buy a billboard, like the Dodgers, when they were using our public means to advertise the Dodgers game. They have the ability to buy the billboards and do all kinds of things. These people are multimillionaires. You'll find that 50 Cent made $72 million in his career, so you can't sit there wanting for money. But we have to be concerned about the nature of a community becoming a culture of crime and violence. And these are the kind of things, the kinds of images that perpetuate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes. That will close our public comment again. Let's move to number 7 now, called special by Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Rosendahl?
Thank you, Mr. President. Could we ask the CLA to come up on this one, please? And maybe building and safety as well. And if planning's around, that'd be great, too. Folks, this is a measure up in Sacramento that gives us on the local level more say about citing an area that we think makes sense for drug and alcohol abuse clinics. And I'd like to ask our city staff what they think of this at this point. Please.
Michael Karsh with the Legislative Analyst Office. We have before you a recommendation in a resolution by Councilman Smith to support AB 3005, 06, and 07. They're all by Assemblymember Emerson. And they all deal with the citing of various kinds of recovery housing areas in our communities. And they speak to the issue of overconcentration. 3005 would allow a city or a county to request the denial of a residential alcohol or drug abuse treatment facility that serves 6 or fewer. Those that are serving more than 6 are already under the local zoning power of a city or a county. So what we're looking at here in these 3 bills are those that treat 6 or fewer.
Hold my time, would you, please, Eric?
This does not, if a city says they don't want it, it does not force the state agency to deny the siting of such a facility here. But it gives the city the opportunity to come before the state agency face to face to say, we think we've got an overconcentration here and this is the reason why. They are forced to consider it, but they're not forced to side with the city in that case. 3006 deals with simply the State Department of Alcohol and Drug Abuse posting on their website information about the database of these recovery centers. It does not really go to whether they may or may not be cited. It's just an information bill. That bill is not moving. 3007, the other of the 3 bills, like 3005, it is moving. It is in the Assembly Appropriations Committee on the suspense file. This would prevent overconcentration of them when there is an issue of the 300-foot distance between them. Now, 300 feet is already required as a distance between most facilities. This would extend it to the situation of the 6 or fewer. The 4th bill is AB 1795 by Bermudez, and it is the same as 3007. Both bills are moving. They're both in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. And these are supported by the League of California Cities as well.
Yeah. Did you want to comment, say something? No, that's fine. Okay. Building and safety, would you talk about what this might mean from your perspective?
Well, Council Member,
Right now, Building and Safety's enforcement authority is limited due to the fact that the state does have control over these. Building and Safety can, in fact, go out and cite, talking about the building itself, not necessarily the use, but can go out and cite the building. If there's any potential violations, additional uses or kitchens or things of that matter, but Building and Safety can, in fact, deal with those types of situations. Given this upcoming legislation, we'd probably have to take some time to take a look at the details of it to see exactly how that translates into what we do on a daily basis, but we're certainly willing to look at that.
Great, great. Well, I want to thank you all for your presentation. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Smith, over here for bringing this to our awareness and highlighting it. And obviously, I urge my colleagues to give it a yes vote. We should have something to say about these things happening in our districts in this city. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Before we hear from our next two speakers, Ms. Hahn and Mr. Reyes, Mr. Labange would like to, afterwards. Okay. Ms. Hahn and then Mr. Reyes.
Thank you. I also am glad that we're taking a position on this. This has been a problem that I've had, particularly in San Pedro. I dare say that I have more special needs housing in the area of San Pedro than almost the rest of the city. In fact, when I looked at a map one time, it was so unbalanced. And we had, sometimes San Pedro claims about not getting their fair share, but we've got more than our fair share of this. And it was frustrating because no matter how many times neighborhoods found these cropping up next to schools, in residential neighborhoods, there was nothing I could do about it. And listen, I support people getting a second chance. I support people being able to be in recovery. We have two great recovery homes in San Pedro, Beacon House and House of Hope, which are absolutely successful and fabulous. But I had a problem with these. They're really businesses. I mean, people have found this to be a lucrative form of making some money. They take a piece of property that they may have, they get 6 people in there and get a pretty hefty amount per month to sort of take care. And I've been frustrated. Okay, what you're telling me is this: the only thing this does is give the city a right to challenge or ask for a denial of an application to form one of these six-packs in the city. Now, that depends on knowing that the application has been filed. How do I, as a city council person, know when an application has been filed at the state to create one of these six-packs in the city of Los Angeles? Hold my time. I know. It's lingo. I've had so many of them, I know.
The awareness of a local official as to what is in the proposal stage is not addressed in the bills.
Say that again?
It is not addressed as to saying...
Okay, colleagues.
I think that...
This is not helpful. This is a know-nothing bill. If it doesn't allow us to know when the application has been filed, how do we challenge?
Well, the current law already requires the state to inform the local jurisdiction that these facilities may be cited. So technically, we already should know about it, whether it actually works out.
How does that come to us? How is the local jurisdiction notified right now?
I'm not sure which agency of the city it would be sent to, but state law currently requires that the local jurisdiction be informed of it.
I will tell you, I have a lot of experience in this, and I never know until I get a complaint from a resident that it has already been established and they have 6 men living in a residential neighborhood who are are in recovery. That's not good enough. Is there a way we can make this stronger? Is there a way we can demand that if for some reason they don't notify the local jurisdiction? And it's, and it's a difference between they may be cited here and the application has been filed. Colleagues, I was excited about this, thinking this might give us a little more authority. I don't see it in this bill.
You could ask for a seek amendment that the local jurisdiction in which any of these applications would apply be informed that there is an application before it and that such be handed to the planning authorities of that city or building safety.
Colleagues, I think that is the least that we can ask for, and I make that as a motion today that we ask for amendment to this bill that at least gives us the opportunity for this to be triggered, that we could actually object to one or ask for a denial. Otherwise, this is a know-nothing bill for us, and it will not change any of our powerlessness in trying to cite these homes. So I would like for my council to support me on that. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Our next speaker is Mr. Reyes, and then Ms. Perry.
In this legislation, are there any indicators as to how they're going to set criteria or standards? Like San Pedro, the area around MacArthur Park, and it tends to be where you have the older buildings, where you have mostly apartments, a lot of the brick buildings, the buildings that are owned by trusts or blind type of ownership where there is no one individual accountable, usually just a law firm, and it's a bleep in someone's investment radar. And that's where these places tend to end up. There's probably 3 to 4 areas in the city that have a strong concentration. In the Hollywood area, the San Pedro area, the area around MacArthur Park, and the area around downtown. We all know the situation with the homeless and how they're being dumped, but it's just as true for many of those in our society that don't have anyone looking out for them. The young people who are adopted and don't get adopted at the age of 18, they take them to a place and say, here you are, you're on your own. Same thing with folks that are going through halfway houses, on and on. So my question to you, is there any indication, any indicators as to how they're going to assess where these facilities will be placed? Are there any criteria of any type? Is there anything like that?
Some of the criteria that the bill lists that would allow a city to petition against the siting of a treatment facility include, but they're not limited to, a listing of other state licensed residential facilities, unlicensed residential facilities, or other land uses in the immediate vicinity of the proposed site.
So, can you repeat that one more time and tell me exactly what that means?
Okay. Those that are listed in the bill are a listing of other state residential facilities, other unlicensed treatment residential facilities, or other land uses located in the immediate vicinity of the proposed site.
So those are the factors they're going to weigh when they're deciding where to put these facilities?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, how do we as a municipality influence where are the thresholds, or what is a certain number too much? Are we going to have a chance to participate in that decision-making process? Are we aware of the process at all?
The process specifically is not defined in the bills, although the objections the city would bring to the state licensing board would include those parts in the argument they would be making against the facility.
So if we were to put forth a resolution, in that resolution we can talk about thresholds of concentrations that would essentially protect the areas that are already inundated with these facilities.
I believe that's the intent of the bill, yes.
And are we going to work towards that language?
Yes, we would. We would be seeking express authority to have Dave Lara appear or whoever else in the city and say, this is our experience within a 3-mile radius, within a 2-mile radius, a 1-mile radius, 300 feet. There are X number of facilities, and we can count those that are licensed and unlicensed. A lot of the unlicensed facilities are the problem because there's very little control of them. We would then have the ability to say so in our protest to the state board, saying, we've counted them, maybe you haven't, but this is the problem that we're facing, and we ask you to turn this down. They may not do so, but at least we'll be able to have more leeway in what we say to the state agency.
So what's the turnaround period? By when do we have to have this type of language in place?
I'm sorry, we would have to get back to you on that.
Okay, I'd hate to miss that window. If we can get something in writing as soon as possible, and we don't have to go to committee on this, but I believe it's a significant land use issue and has a socioeconomic impact on communities. So can you get back to us, at least let those council members who voiced the concern, give us a memo or some kind of signal as to the timeframes by when we have to have this in place? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Ms. Perry and then Ms. Hahn.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think that those of us who have a higher incidence of uses in our district that are perhaps unauthorized or unlicensed understand the ramifications of having an overconcentration of certain types of activities, not just in a community, but in a census tract. Now, I understand that, you know, we have to one of our tools is the conditional use process when 6 or more go into a facility, because I believe under state law, anything that 6 people or below is by right. So there really isn't any way, if somebody decides to put a by right facility in, even if they do it, say 3 by right facilities on one block, and define them as separate entities, they can still put them in by right, which would mean that as a city, we actually don't get any notice. If they do any tenant improvements or whatever, they could go to Building and Safety directly and pull a permit, but there's no way that we would know that. And you know, I've had my own issues with that, as you folks know. So I feel like there's a gap there, and I'm not clear as to whether or not this bill closes that gap. I don't think that it does for us as a city.
No, it doesn't. This gives us the opportunity only to protest to the state agency. The state agency does not have to agree with us.
Does not have to what?
Does not have to agree with us, and therefore say, nope, we're not going to let them be
So does this
located.
bill diminish further our ability to have some input or say into how
No, this
many
increases.
This increases our ability?
Yes.
And so walk me through how it does increase it. Hold my time.
Providing that we can pin down exactly when the window of opportunity is for us to protest. Is it before the fact or after the fact? It should be before the fact. The intent is to get in there before the place is licensed. And that we can say, no, we don't want to, and then here is our presentation. We would have the presentation by our building and safety or our planning and zoning people that we have found so many facilities in the area, maybe they're not licensed by you, but we have to deal with them. We can then make that presentation to them. We can ask them to deny the application. But the state board itself cannot, is not forced to then say, we agree with you. They may agree, and they may turn down the application. This gives us a step that we do not now have.
So how do we trigger that, though, on our behalf? I mean, I think you're talking about like maybe an early notification system, but unless the state has a mechanism once an agency or an entity has filed an application to form a group or a provider or something, how would they know to trigger to notify the city? Hold my time.
In Assembly Bill 3005, there is something of a time provision and a notification requirement, and that it says at least 45 days prior to approving any application, the State Board must notify the appropriate county, city, or planning department, and then within that period of time, they could voice their objections to the State Board.
If I might just interject, I think prior to approving means that it's already in the pipeline, which means that if you're dealing with a nonprofit or a community-based organization, they've already expended money, time, you know, you put them at risk, and it's actually in some ways unfair to them because they have expended time and money, and most nonprofits can't afford to do that without having a positive outcome. So is there some other way to trigger an early warning?
Not that is written in the bill. If something could already be existing prior to it being approved,
Hold my time.
then there would really be no recourse. But this would allow us to have recourse or give us a 45-day window before it was approved by the State Board to voice an objection.
I might add that all of this is subject to some federal law which does restrict how much a state can do. The bill has been crafted under the recognition of federal law, and there isn't much further that a state bill can go. It is better than what we have today. It's not as much as some of you would like, but that is about as far as we can go. And that's under federal court rulings as well as federal statutory law.
Is this item time sensitive?
The bills are in Assembly Appropriations Committee. They're ready for a vote either today or tomorrow or Thursday.
Great. I don't know what to do. I mean, it sounds good on the surface, but you know, the implementation and the practical effect of it out there in the community is a whole other issue. And you know, I'd almost rather err, for myself, I'd probably err on the side of being what I think is safe, and maybe I would vote no on it, but I don't know if that's the right thing to do. Hold my time.
We have been asked to present a memo to the council going into further details as to the exact timing of when an application comes in and how much time we would have to respond. We'll be glad to follow up with that information for you. In the meantime, you may wish to still approve the report before you. It does give the city more than we now have.
More than a what? Couldn't hear.
That's because the city more than it has today.
Ms. Perry? Okay. We have for the first time Mr. Smith, then Mr. Cardenas, then for a second time Ms. Hahn and Mr. Reyes.
Thank you. There was a bill in the legislature last year that gave us a little more authority than these bills. Unfortunately, it got to the governor's desk and was vetoed. He wanted something stronger. And what we're getting from the legislature is not something stronger, it's a little weaker, but it is something more than we have today. And I think that's the important part, members. It's more than we have today. It allows us, one, to catalog these locations. And we don't have that now. We don't have the ability to know where a lot of these are. So you get an accumulation. One of these bills disallows accumulation. So you can only have so many within so many feet of each other. We don't have that now. It allows our fire department to go in and do some annual inspections too in some of these bills. These are the kind of things we've been fighting for in the legislature. Mr. Ridley Thomas assisted us last year, as Audra Strickland did. We got some of those bills. They didn't get far enough. But I think the important part is this isn't all we want by any stretch of the imagination. We lost that fight in the 1980s when we lost the ability to zone these in the first place. Now we're trying to get back a little bit of that authority. And this is not a perfect bill by any stretch of the imagination, but it gives us a little bit more around the edges of the issue. And the edges of the issue is better than we got now. And that's, I think, the important thing. As we move forward, your amendment is a perfect amendment, shows what we need, and at least we take a step forward. Even though it's a small step, it's a step forward. And I think that was the important part here, is we're moving a little bit forward. It's not where we want to be, but if we take this step, then we can come back next year and get a bigger step, and so on. And as more and more people like Mr. Padilla end up in the legislature, we can fight for those kind of things in the legislature and get some support up there. So I just urge the council to support this. It's not what you want, it's not everything, but it's better than we have today. And I think that's the bottom line. It's better than we have today.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Before Mr. Cardenas, I just want to recognize Mr. Weiss for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. Girls, if I could ask you to stand up so you'd be ready for your close-up. Colleagues, I want to introduce you to the graduating seniors from the Beis Yaakov Academy in my district. Beis Yaakov is a fantastic girls' school on Beverly Boulevard, and we're delighted to have you here. You are counting the days until graduation, so I guess it's better than being in school, being in City Hall. And as part of your government class, you're learning about city government. So welcome. Welcome to City Hall.
Welcome to all the students. Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mr. Cardenas is our next speaker.
I just wanted to suggest, hearing what Councilmember Hahn and Councilmember Perry were talking about this bill, how it has some elements that we may like, but and also adding to what Greg Smith just said, Councilman Smith, that it still doesn't have as much as we'd like to have in the bill. So maybe what we could do, for those of you who are more in tune with the details of this bill, is either we could support if amended, we could oppose unless amended, or what have you. But since it has some elements in it already that we like, but it's not strong enough. Maybe what we could do is have a motion where it says support if amended. We don't want to use the word opposed because we don't oppose progress, but we do not support it in full because it still has some elements missing, and we'd like to see them put those elements in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hahn for a second time, followed by Mr. Reyes for a second time.
Thank you, and I think this is a very good discussion because we don't really talk about this issue enough. And again, I don't think this gets us where we want to be, but I'm not sure we'll ever have the kind of local authority, zoning authority that we want that was taken away from us. So it does have elements that are good. Is there anything in here if we have found that in any way the state did not notify the local jurisdiction? Is there punishment? Is there retroactive, yanking of the license? What happens if they don't? Because clearly, unless it is on somebody's desk somewhere in this city, I don't believe they've been doing this. They have not been notifying the local jurisdiction, even though you're telling me that currently they are supposed to be notifying
Yes, this
us.
has been an issue for many years, and the state has said we try to
Hold my time.
get notification out. It may not always work. It may go to the city clerk. It may go to a different office in different cities. This bill is attempting to, I think it
This bill
specifies
talks
the
about
planning
it going to the
agency.
planning department. Is that
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
But what if we find one has cropped up in our local neighborhood and lo and behold, they forgot or failed to notify, and we lost our 45-day window to challenge it? Is there any
Recourse
on the part of the
against the
city?
state.
The bill does not include any recourse. However, they would not be able to issue or to approve an application for residential care facility. So the argument could be made that any authority or approval of application is void because they did not notify the city before 45 days of approving it.
It's wishy-washy. Colleagues, the other thing I'm concerned about, and I know I made one amendment already, the other thing is I think 45 days is too short. 45 days is a very short time for them to notify, the bureaucracy of the City of Los Angeles, and for any way that bureaucracy to get to the local council district where this is going to be cited, giving us any time to run it by neighborhood councils or area planning commissions. 45 days is too short. I would also like us to maybe amend that to be, 60, 90 days. I don't know what the pleasure of the body is, but 45 days is not enough time for us to actually weigh in on something that has this great significant impact to local residential communities. So I would also like us to ask for a longer day, 60 or 90 days. I think that makes more sense. And then the other thing, this is a great opportunity to catalog. This has always been my issue with the planning department. I always thought the planning department should plan Los Angeles with a capital P. We have never planned Los Angeles in terms of where things should be rightly located. This is a great opportunity for our planning department to catalog what we have now. And I'd like to see that as soon as possible. Let's identify what we know today as being special needs housing in all the council districts, so when these notifications come, we will be ready to say, Council District 15, you're oversaturated, but 12, we've got a lot of room over there to accept some of these. So I think we ought to be ready to look at where these are located now and be ready with our challenge or our denial request when they come in. But we need to be armed with our own statistics when this starts happening. So I would urge the planning department to start cataloging now, knowing where these homes are located today. Thank you. Did I get a second on my request for a longer period?
Mr. Reyes seconds.
Okay.
That whole side seconds, I think. Mr. Reyes.
Yes, thank you, Council President. With technology today being what it is, our mapping capabilities, I think it behooves us to start at least mapping what we know today internally, not knowing where this legislation is going to take us in the end, but it gives us a place in which we can at least have a strong understanding of where the congestion lies when you have the accumulation of these facilities in one area. That should be, I think, common knowledge. I mean, now we have information when there's a person who's been a molester, right? Child molesters, we know where they're at, where they live, we track them. These facilities, we should have the ability to understand where they're located. Now, colleagues, if I can get a second to direct the planning department to map these facilities, that would give us at least a baseline data as to where it's too crowded. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Laban, seconds.
Please hold my time.
AB 3006 is the one that would establish the website with the information as to where all kinds of facilities are located under the jurisdiction of the State Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs.
But for our local planning discipline, our own planning processes, as we start talking about transit-oriented districts where we're going to concentrate housing, where we're going to preserve neighborhoods, understanding these pockets so that we at least understand how to start achieving some level of balance. Like I said before, there's 4, maybe 5 areas in the city where there's large concentrations because of the age of the building and the nature of the neighborhoods that have been neglected over the years. So that would be a directive that we should fulfill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Anybody else wishing to be heard on this? Madam Clerk, we have a couple amendments that have been made. Will you please state what we have before us?
Ms. Han's amendment, first amendment was that the home jurisdiction be informed of the application to seek an amendment in this, and also to change the time frame from 45 days to either 60 or 90 days. And also Mr. Reyes directed the planning department to map facilities of this type.
Okay. Colleagues, any objection to those amendments? So those will be accepted as friendly. If we can open the roll on the item as amended, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, before that, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Labange. We have a very special diplomatic guest here today.
Council
and Mr.
Member
Wesson.
Wesson is going to join me. Council General Choi, please join us at the podium here. Pleased to welcome to Los Angeles a Council General for Korea who is here, represented his great country. Previous diplomatic post was in Norway, where he served as the ambassador for their country. A man who is a great educator, who teaches at the university in Korea as well, and now he's settled into Los Angeles. We want to certainly welcome, and please join with me in welcoming Council General Choi. I'm going to have Mr. Wesson say a few words.
Anyway, Mr. Choi, welcome to the greatest city in the world. I'm sure you enjoyed working in Norway, but be assured you're going to find this to be the greatest post that you've had in your many years of public service. And Mr. Labange and I think Mr. Reyes, we basically have the Koreatown area, so I look forward to working very closely with you. And again, welcome to our great city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wesson. I think that's so nice. And I also think it's so nice, too, that Ms. Han has a very special part of Korea culture in her district. Ms. Han?
Oh, thank you, and welcome to Los Angeles. I believe that I have the most beautiful symbol of the friendship between the United States and the people of Korea in my council district down in San Pedro. In 1976, the people of Korea, in a beautiful show of friendship, presented the United States with the Korean Friendship Bell, which we ring 4 times a year on July 4th, our Independence Day, August 15th, Korean Independence Day, I think in September, Constitution Day, and then on New Year's Eve. We ring the bell, and I invite you to come July 4th when we will ring the bell for the independence of the United States, and know that every time we ring that bell, we are grateful to the people of Korea for that symbol of friendship, and we pray for the peaceful unification of Korea. Welcome to Los Angeles.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, council members and Mr. President. It's my great honor to be here today. And as you may know, Korea is one of the most vibrant and dynamic countries in the Asia Pacific. And I understand that Los Angeles is the most dynamic and diverse cities in the United States. I believe that the Korean American community here, they represent both qualities of these good elements, and they are doing well with your support. I really wish you that you would continue to support the ethnic Koreans here to get integrated into the American mainstream community. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, members. Mr. Wesson, join with me on behalf of Mayor Villaraigosa to present this. I know you had a meeting with the mayor earlier today. This is the great seal of the city of Los Angeles. We welcome you, Councilmember Choi. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, welcome, Ambassador Choi, and it's wonderful to have you here in the city. And I know that a few members may be visiting Korea later this year, so it's something that we look forward to strengthening the ties between our great countries. We now have item number 15. Colleagues, there's already been a public hearing held on this, so we do have one speaker card. It would require a motion, though, from the floor to be heard. Otherwise, we would take the item. Yes, Ms. Gruhl.
And only because I did say earlier, and I hope this individual may have stayed, I would ask that we just give this person an opportunity to speak.
There's no objection. We will open public hearing.
Thank you.
And Carlos Rubio? Is Carlos Rubio here? Okay. If we can, gentlemen, if we can just make a little bit of room over by the podium for our public speaker. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Rubio. We'll be right with you. Thank you. We have 2 minutes to address the council. Welcome.
Thank you. Honorable President Garcetti, Honorable President Pro Tempore Gruhl, Honorable Assistant President Pro Tempore Jan Perry, I thank you for your time. My name is Carlos Rubio, and I am a union representative, and I am not here to oppose the extension for a 5-star parking contract at LAX. I am here to make you aware of a major labor dispute that we are having with the owners of 5-star parking at the non-union LAX off-site parking lots. They're in direct competition with LAX Airport, and they're making millions on the backs of the employees in our community. So the purpose of me being here today is just to communicate that to you, that we're in a major labor dispute with the owners of 5-star parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that information. That closes public comment. Anybody wish to be heard on this? If not, let's please prepare the roll on item 15 and tabulate the vote. Tabulate the vote, please.
13 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Next item is item, do we take 13? I'm sorry, my apologies. Let's take up item 13, called special by Ms. Han.
Thank you, and I'd like to have Michael Collins come on up here. Colleagues, what we have before us today is a replacement contract with LA Inc., our Convention and Visitors Bureau, for a term of 3 years. As you're aware, LA Inc. serves to promote tourism to Los Angeles and coordinates the efforts to book conventions, meetings throughout the city, particularly for our convention center. Part of LA Inc.'s annual budget comes from the city through our transient occupancy, or hotel tax, and I believe it's very important for us as a council to carefully review the work of LA Inc. to make sure we're getting what we're paying for. Some of you may remember a few years ago, the controller conducted an audit on LA Inc. and identified some deficiencies in their operation. But since then, I will say that I believe LA Inc. has worked hard to make a lot of good improvements, including some major changes in management, a more diverse board of directors, and a redirection of their focus. And I think what's very good about this contract that's before us today is something called Appendix F. And it is A through O of specifics that we can begin to have a better handle on evaluating whether or not LA Inc. is actually booking more conventions, is actually increasing tourism, is actually really promoting our city. One of the interesting things is that we have in N that they will provide increased emphasis on the San Fernando Valley as a place to visit and stay overnight. That's a direct part of this contract that we can begin to hold them accountable for because there's more than just downtown LA. With all due respect to Jan Perry and the Convention Center, where we want to encourage visitors to come. We want them to go to the Valley. We want them to book meetings out there, stay overnight, visit the attractions in the Valley. We want them to be marketing San Pedro and the cruise lines, and there's other areas of the city. There's museums all over. There's great cultural attractions in Los Angeles, and I think this contract does a better job of laying out some specifics of what we would like to see LA Inc., which is our very own sort of marketing bureau to market Los Angeles and bring tourism here. You know, when we increase tourism in the city of Los Angeles even by 4%, we're told that that gives us about $12 million into our general fund. So that's a direct way that we can have revenue coming into the city of Los Angeles. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions to Michael, and maybe some of you would also like to grill him a little bit in terms of what we can expect from this contract. I think these goals, Michael, are very aggressive. I think they're very bold. I think they're right. I think they're exactly where we need to be going in terms of finally marketing Los Angeles, all of Los Angeles, to the rest of the world. How do you think, how are you going to go about evaluating the goals found in this contract and making sure that you're indeed living up to this bold dream about tourism in Los Angeles?
I thank you actually for the question, and I also should take this moment to thank all the others who have been part of preparing a rather significantly different contract than this organization has had since it first contracted back in '76. What Appendix F is something that's going to be constructed every single year. This is a 3-year contract, but every year Appendix F will be rewritten, and what it contains are a series of, in many cases, numbers that are objectively quantifiable. And it's those numbers, some of them the ones that you're most familiar with are the conventions, room nights, bookings. But there are others that you're not so familiar with. Our board is, but they're new to this, which is a series of performance regarding the marketing side of our business, the private sector revenue that we bring in as part of our contract. You'll see at the top of our contract it says to partially fund the work of the Bureau. It's our job to bring additional dollars from the industry to partner with the investment that the city has made. Every number in here is objective in the sense that they can be measured up or down. The other difference in this contract that is associated with Appendix F is that we are going to find ourselves before your committee and others on a regular basis, 4 times a year, telling you how we're doing against these objectives. The last thing I wanted to mention, if I just have this 1 second, is that in the process of creating objectives, goals, in the past, I confess, we were probably more inclined to do that unilaterally. One of the great changes that has taken place in our work with the CLA's office, the CAO, and most recently with the city attorney, is informing this contract, is developing partnerships with not just a new city council committee, but a vastly expanded board of directors. I mean, literally twice the size with far more participation, and a regional hotel group, groups I should say, that take a look at those objectives and put their stamp on it as well. I too should acknowledge Councilmember Gruhl's efforts to start that, because what happened in the Valley worked, and it's allowed us to expand that to other parts of the city as well.
Why don't you give us a quick projection maybe of hotel occupancies and convention center bookings for this year? What can we expect? Are we on track? What can we do better?
In terms of bookings, it's best to answer that question if I do it retroactively for a second, because you'll get a sense of the scale. A year ago, if I was in this room at exactly this time, for convention center bookings, I would have said 72,000 room nights were booked. As of right now, and there's still a month to go, we're over 350,000 room nights.
Wow.
And the difference there is, as much as anything else, the fact that we've got a city that is extraordinarily active right now in creating products that help us sell the city, but it's also that we have a lot of partners. I should mention also that this partnership has included in our board of directors, members of this group, the active participation of the CLA and the CAO, also the chairman of the Convention Center Commission, Kelly Bernard, has also just been placed on our board.
Oh, very good. I was going to ask what was the relationship between the Convention Center Board and you. You just
It should be quite close and very active.
Good. Well, colleagues, you might want to have a few more questions. One of the things I did forget to say, which you've mentioned, I wanted more than an annual report. So LA Inc. will be reporting 4 times a year to our Commerce, Trade, and Tourism Committee, so we can all work together to make sure that we're doing the best we can to market Los Angeles. I also got to say we're really happy Michael Collins and LA Inc. has been working with Bill Rosendahl on the Century Corridor. We're looking at how we can really improve the hotels there, improve their room rates. They have the highest occupancy but the lowest room rates. We think that's an opportunity for them to increase their revenue. We're also very excited about the possibility of a small conference center to be built by LAX. We think that makes sense for people who come into LAX to not necessarily have to book the convention center, but maybe have more interest in a smaller conference center. So we really want to thank you for that. And I will throw you one more directive. And I said this before, you know, we have 1 million cruise ship passengers that embark and disembark right in San Pedro on an annual basis. They spend hours in the terminal before they can get on their ship. Many people come 5 or 6 hours before the ship actually leaves San Pedro. We're building a brand new cruise terminal that should be the state of the art. It's my advice, or I think it's a great idea, that LA Inc. actually work with those who are building the cruise ship terminals so that you have a permanent place in those terminals where you can make sure that all those people who are in the vacation mode can also look at all the great possibilities in Los Angeles that they can either do before their cruise or after their cruise. And I think that will really increase money being spent throughout Los Angeles and not just on the cruise ship. So that's a great possibility.
We're scheduled with your office to show you the new kiosk design that we're going to be opening up.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Ms. Grewal to be followed by Mr. Rosendahl, to be followed by Mr. Reyes, to be followed by Mr. Labange. Ms. Grewal.
Thank you, and I will be brief, and thank you, Ms. Hahn, for your work on this and getting a report back. I think we're all interested in having more information, and Mike, we've had an opportunity to talk several times, and thank you for mentioning our efforts in the Valley. And what I was going to ask you was, how is our pilot program going there and the kind of relationship, because I'm hoping it does serve as a model and that we can build upon that, because I know Economic Alliance and others are still, wanting to grow that relationship.
The answer, I guess, is best expressed in the participation of the hotel community. We are now on a regular, like every other month now, meeting with them. We just had our first, and it's a new term, but it's a legitimate one, called Valley-wide Convention. The San Fernando Valley Business Journal talked about it 2 weeks ago. We have assigned specific people as part of that program to specific types of business which are unique to the Valley and not the same as those that are being sought downtown, which I hasten to add are different than San Pedro. But that model that you and we worked on applies just as logically to the West Side and just as logically to every other part of the city. Under Councilman Rosendahl's leadership, we are also focusing with that same kind of thinking at LAX. So it started and it's actively engaged now. This is not something we are ramping up. We're doing it now.
Great, and I really appreciate it. And I know we nudged a lot there for a while to kind of acknowledge the Valley and its participation. And Dennis, I was at, I can't remember, Warner Center Marriott a week or so ago on a Saturday, and that place was packed. Not just with the event we were there, but people staying there. And I've seen kind of an intensity, and it looked like it was a conference there, and it looked like there was a conference when I was at the Universal Sheraton recently. And so I'm pleased with that and hoping that kind of combination will help us again continue to grow.
We're confident that it will. I'm very proud of the fact that VICA will be awarding us a tourism award in June.
Yes. Yes.
Something that would not have happened
Congratulations.
a year
Something that
ago,
would
I
not,
can
that's
assure you.
right, it would not have happened a few years ago. Thank you for recognizing that. Thank you, Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Rosendahl, then Mr. Reyes,
Thank
and
you,
Mr. Walsh.
President. It's nice to hear my name and not in vain, which was wonderful. First of all, Tom LaBonge and I last night were at an event in Venice at Gary Schaffner's house, an eclectic home in Venice, and there was the President's Commission on Arts and Humanity. There was the head of a lot of groups from all over the country were here. And they were here for a 3-day festival and convention of the President's Commission. Why? Because Los Angeles is an eclectic, creative capital of the planet. We're thrilled that they came. They started with Venice, which is my home base, and we're very proud of the art and the genius of Venice. I mean, you know, the hula hoop and the skaters and all of these things happen here. We're a trendsetter, Los Angeles. So I was thrilled to be able to host them and welcome them to LA. But that's part of tourism at its very best. And I acknowledge my colleague Tom LaBonge for coming over into the district with his lovely wife Bridget, and we had a wonderful time at that event. But let me ask you a couple of questions. Yeah. Obviously, everything you do is a plus for the city because it generates more revenue for the city, and it helps not only the city coffers, but the businesses in this community. Where are you on the Century Boulevard projects that we've been looking at? We've been looking at a survey to see if we could have a conference center. We're looking at beautifying the street. We're looking at making it a destination point rather than a transit point for those hotels. Michael, bring us up to date.
Okay, I can do this quickly. For your colleagues, I just should remind them that something that's not commonly known is that your district houses the largest concentration of the city's hotel rooms. And as a result, what happens there matters in terms of not only transient occupancy tax, jobs, revenue, everything else. A while back, the question was posed as to whether or not a conference center might find itself being something that could drive up room rates. It is an extraordinary distinction that the airport has the largest occupancy rate of all hotels, but the lowest room rate of all the hotels. I mean, literally it's the opposite ends of the spectrum.
Why is that?
It's a matter of what the market will bear, and it's purely a market issue. The hotel industry out there in the last analysis is responsible for driving up rates as best they can. They're obviously competing with each other, and that's not easy. But in the end, it's what the market will bear. And currently, that enormous concentration of hotel rooms that I hasten to add was built for an industry that no longer is there, the aerospace industry, doesn't have that infrastructure demand that it would have had with the aerospace industry. It doesn't have, if you will, the fun factor. I hate to make it seem so frivolous, but it's critical to the success of any destination. Dining, entertainment, retail, street access activities up and down that boulevard. It doesn't have that now. A conference center will be a part of that solution, but it will probably need to be placed in context. We're going to be reporting to your committee, I think now in 2 weeks, with an outline of the response to a couple of very in-depth interviews done with clients regarding the prospects of a conference center.
Great.
Right out there.
Great, and I certainly want to thank the leadership of Janice Hahn on the committee. She's been fantastic, and asking for a report quarterly will keep everybody's feet to the fire and will help us understand what we need to do from a marketing perspective to give you the resources, because every tourist dollar is more money for the general treasury and more money for business and more money for the community. I was very excited last night to get the sense of how the nation looks at Los Angeles, and the more you promote it, the more the stars are willing to give their name. Tell us a little bit about the celebrity component.
Well, that's something that I first brought Patty McJennet, who is our head of our marketing, started 3.5 years ago, the See My LA campaign, with a couple of celebrities. Here's the simple notion. We are a city that has great weather and palm trees and mountains, and other cities seem to say they have in Southern California many of the same virtues, but they don't. As you were saying, this is I believe, the pop culture capital of the world. The entertainment industry is just one aspect that proves that. So we began to ask stars if they would be celebrities, if they would, without cost, put their name to telling their part of the LA story to their customers. And over the past couple of years, we've been able to expand that now to 50 celebrities. And these are celebrities that are not just in the movie industry, but in sports. And not just in sports, but sports to certain parts of the world, so that we can find a Korean pitcher talking about seeing my LA to an audience which is terribly important to us on terms that are uniquely LA's. San Diego can't do that. San Francisco can't do that. No other city can do that. And we're so grateful. I'm so glad you mentioned this, because it gives me a chance to thank those folks for giving us the most precious thing they've got, which is their face and their name and their voice, and they don't charge us for it. We're very, very grateful for that.
Well, we're real grateful because Los Angeles is the blending of the planet. It's the microcosm of the earth. It's the major city in the 21st century that brings all nations of the world together. And when we can grab a nation's immigrants that are here and connect back to their home countries, we've given a warmth and a connection that no other city can do.
Yes, sir.
And I want to thank you very much for that. And Tom LaBonge's bread, you know, this pumpkin bread that he gives out, he gave it out again last night. We should make that part of the symbol going forward, is that pumpkin bread from Tom LaBonge. Thanks.
Thank you.
That'll be made an official motion, no doubt in writing. Mr. Reyes is our next speaker, and then Mr. Pumpkin Bread himself, Mr. LaBonge.
Thank you, Council President. Mike, we've been working for a long time on trying to reveal and celebrate the diversity of LA. And back in the mid-90s, we went through a whole process of working our block grants, investing in programs like the Los Angeles Neighborhood Initiative. For example, in District 1 in Highland Park, close to $3 to $5 million on just lights and streets and new sidewalks. The Byzantine Corridor in Pico Union, another village-type environment. We have Greek food, Mexican, Central American food. I mean, we have these tremendous jewels that a good map would be how the city's invested in neighborhoods through the Los Angeles Neighborhood Initiative. Lonnie is one of those places. They tend to be locations where you have the second largest populations of many countries other than their capitals.
Yes.
So in your LA Inc., how have we addressed our built-in infrastructure, our own mapping system through these investments, and have we used that as part of our marketing strategy with LA?
Yeah, thank you.
Please hold my time.
Councilman, that is a marketing advantage. And we have been able to exploit that by making partnerships, actually promotion partnerships, with the carriers, if you will, the distribution system that allows for visiting friends and relatives to have access to LA. And we do promotions both in Europe and in the Asian carriers. Over the past, and I think this number is right, we have had over 60 airlines that have partnered with us. They spend their money to help promote passengers from that part of the world that is, has a large population here. That alliance that we have is probably one of the most natural ones, because it allows for those folks to get access here more easily by promoting it. We're doing it in many different languages. We have websites now that are, not, because of the nature of the way people are buying, in 7 different languages. And so that their access to information about LA is very simple. One last point about the visiting friends and relatives, and I should have mentioned this at the outset, forgive me, is that 1/2 of the approximately 25 million visitors are visiting friends and relatives. They're not staying in hotels. So to your point, it's a huge market.
So are we using the Lonnies within a city family? Are we using what we've already invested in, given the amount of dollars going into the infrastructure? Are we connecting with Lonnie, for example?
I can't speak to that one in particular. I'll bet you we do. If we don't, our relationship with the Cultural Affairs Department, which keeps track of every single one of those things, connects those events on our website. So if it isn't there, we can remedy that.
But it's not only such the issue here is not only an event, it's the location as a destination.
In our guides, yes. And if I think we can best express that by showing you the literature that we have for visitor guides, region by region. Not necessarily district by district, but certainly region by region.
The Northeast has one of the fastest growing art galleries throughout Figueroa. It has a history of being a center of social movements and art, and it's amazing what happens in the Northeast, and it's a very well kept secret, and it's flourishing up and down Figueroa, and no one knows about it unless you are from the neighborhoods. Here you have an incredible magnifying glass that you can just
Yes.
allow folks to understand that fine grain of community fabric that can be absorbed. And we have many hidden treasures. The Guelaguetza, it's a huge celebration of foods that's based right here in Pico Union. They fill up the sports arena just from the people who come
Are
from
here.
different villages that live in Los Angeles and have businesses in Los Angeles, and all the great foods that come from there. So I believe we're missing this big giant out there in a way, and it's not
Yeah.
because you're not trying.
I
I know
understand.
you're trying, but I think Lonnie is one of those maps, if you will, of where we've invested
we have.
millions of dollars into our neighborhoods, and they tend to be neighborhoods that the mainstream might consider undesirable because of the reputations.
But the world of visitors is changing a lot. The contemporary urban visitor is far more curious and far more interested about experiencing the authentic part of a city, frankly, than they are prepackaged. One thing I should also acknowledge is one of those names of the celebrities, Mauricio Cienfuegos, which came from a suggestion from your office.
Great.
Very grateful.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. Everyone corrected Mr. Rosendahl. You talked about the city coffers. Oh, God bless the pumpkin bread. But remember you talked about, the city coffers when visitors come here? Most important thing, though, I think, is how they feel with their LA experience, which will then bring more. And I know I just don't want this image as a very important council member to make you know what I'm saying. You're soulful, Billy. All the people who come that way, it's so important. Michael, I just wanted to thank you. And listening to all of us there, whether it was Janice talking about the port and connecting the port, it's amazing that people get on planes and fly to Los Angeles to take cruises. You know the number?
1 million of them.
1 million people fly here, and they may do something else while they're here. There should be a direct fast bus from the port to Hollywood every day at peak season, and working with the people of San Pedro, they could come back and forth. You got to think that way. And I think what Wendy said too.
And Janice
is
Hahn
so
could take it to
important.
visit us.
About the San Fernando Valley, I know Universal is in my district, and it impacts the whole area there, and working with Universal, and what is called the Drive Market members. That means people who are within 2, 3 hours, 4 hours of Los Angeles who may drive here. And how big is the Drive Market?
It's about, in the summertime, literally half of the, half of the domestic visitor market.
Is Drive Market.
It's Drive Market, and
And what's that half mean? Like, is that 7 million people? Or?
oh no, it would be around 12, almost 12 million.
12 million Drive. That's people from San Bernardino.
Well, I was about to say,
Orange County.
You know where the single biggest source of those are? It's curiously enough, it's San Francisco is the first one, San Diego is second, and the area that you're talking about is third, which is the 5-county area. And they come and they spend the night.
Right. And also, I know there's these planes that fly into Bob Hope Airport, Mr. Zine, right into Bob Hope Airport, and they're right from New York and other places, and people can get an experience. And I think whether it's the Valley or San Pedro, or as Ed was expressing, the soulful neighborhoods, that's what people want to see. And as Bill was talking about, all those airports were built out, all the hotels were built out there, as you know, because the domestic change in business. They get off a plane, they want to go there. And LMU, the great, where you had your community empowerment congress. I want to hear more about that great Saturday that you have there. That'd be a classic place for a constant small seminar, small meeting place, but is there. So you have a big task ahead to continue to do it, you and your staff, Patty McJennett, and thank you. And I know Mark does a great job for you, leading the ship there, and all the people there. Just continue to lead.
Thank you.
Okay, and make people enjoy and love Los Angeles. And members, I think it is important that we do just welcome the stranger, because I know when we've traveled, whether we were elected officials or not, whenever you found a good place where people were friendly, you said to somebody else, go to Los Angeles. There's nice people there. And believe it, and I just want to say this, a few more minutes. The whole thing about crash is one thing, okay? But if you engage, as we do in this city, if you go to art galleries, if you walk the promenade in San Pedro, if you go out to Sepulveda Basin and ride your bike, if you engage, if you hike at Griffith Park, if you go to Leimert Park, you find that you have a connection with people, and it's not a crash, it's a relationship. So improve the relationship, and then people will come Lastly, we're looking for your work on helping us open up the observatory, which all these great members of City Council and the mayor have supported.
We're looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. That's our final speaker on this. If we can prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Our last item is, Madam Clerk.
Number 19, and that was called special by Councilmember Smith.
Before Mr. Smith speaks, I also did want to point out, colleagues, to everybody that it is one of our colleagues' birthdays, Wendy Gruhl. We want to wish you a very happy birthday. One of our very youngest members, and we're very pleased your birthday. So with that, have a wonderful birthday, and we will turn our attention to item.
Point of order, point of order.
Yes, Mr. Labange.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy Wendy. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
All right. And I know, Serenade, I know Mr. Zidon will remember this. Put another candle on the birthday cake, the birthday cake. Who sang that song?
Sheriff John.
Sheriff John, good job.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to press your button again, Mr. Labange. Just kidding. Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Smith. Item 19.
Thank you. Just a technical correction on item 19 on number 4. It says direct the Bureau of Sanitation to report back periodically. We'd like to make that quarterly.
Quarterly, okay. Let's make that, if nobody objects, that's a friendly amendment. And let's open the roll as amended, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Next items.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those are posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Weiss requests to be excused Tuesday, May 30th to leave at 11:15 for city business that meets council policy.
Mr. Weiss is excused.
Councilmember Cardenas requests to be excused June 2nd to arrive at 11 a.m. for city business. A motion is required.
Okay, Mr. Smith moves and Mr. Reyes seconds. If there's no objection, that'll be granted.
And that clears the desk.
Okay, any announcements, colleagues? Announcements? Mr. Labange?
Say it was an absolutely beautiful rain yesterday, and unfortunately there was a man in the Los Angeles River, but he was successfully rescued by Engine 56 and Heavy Rescue 56 and other Los Angeles City firefighters, so I want to thank them for their speedy recovery of a man near Victory Boulevard in the Los Angeles River. And today was an absolutely beautiful sunrise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange, and I also wanted to congratulate everybody who was a part of the Los Angeles River Ride. We kicked off in Mr. Labange's district in Griffith Park, and I rode along with my father, and I know many other bike riders throughout the city enjoyed that wonderful bike ride. Are there other announcements, colleagues? If not, any adjourning motions, colleagues? If I could please ask everybody to rise in council chambers for our adjourning motions. And if I can ask our council ambassadors as well to please rise for our adjourning motions. And we will start. And we want to welcome aboard also our new council ambassadors that are here. Make sure you say hi to our latest group of young folks who are the smiling face of Los Angeles City Council and helping our visitors that are here. So welcome aboard. With that, I'd like to recognize Ms. Hahn for our first adjourning motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like us to adjourn today in the memory of Nancy Scotto, who was a longtime resident of Torrance, and she was the mother of Torrance City Councilman Frank Scotto. She died on May 19th. She was active in the Sons of Italy, and she was preceded in death by her husband Thomas, and she survived by her 3 sons, Nick, Frank, Mike, 2 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. I know this was particularly hard for Frank. All of us, he's in a major campaign right now for the mayor of Torrance, and I know all of us who have been in campaigns know how soul-consuming a campaign can be, and yet I know he was very, very concerned about his mother's illness during this time, so we wish him well, and may she rest in peace. The funeral services will be tomorrow at 11 a.m. at St. Margaret Mary Church of Lomita. Also, I'd like us to adjourn today in memory of Edward Mendoza, who passed away on May 19th in San Pedro. He was a Wilmington resident for 62 years. He graduated from Banning High School, and he was a baseball player who went on to become an avid Banning baseball booster. And with his great love for baseball, he coached and mentored the Wilmington youth for 33 years, coaching notable teams such as the Hawks, the Panthers, the softball Toughies. He was an honorary lifetime VFW member with VFW Post 2967. He was also vice president of the Will Hall Senior Citizens and a founding member of the Chili Peppers Golf Club. He's predeceased by his children, Barbara, Andrew, and Christine, and he's survived by his children, Rudy, Eddie, Ernie, Raymond, and Lisa Marie, 9 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, and the funeral mass will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Holy Family Catholic Church in Wilmington. A great loss for the community of Wilmington.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Are there adjourning motions, colleagues? Mr. Rosendahl?
I want to talk about Senator Lloyd Bentsen. He died at age 85. Remember when he was running for vice president, he mentioned to Dan Quayle, you know, I knew JFK, and you certainly are no JFK. Well, he was a courtly Texan who represented the state in Congress for 28 years and served as President Clinton's first Treasury Secretary. He died Tuesday morning. He was 85 years old. Bentsen also was the 1988 vice presidential nominee, and he died at his home in Houston. He was chairman of the Tax Writing Senate Finance Committee for 6 years. Bentsen was a solidly pro-business Democrat who compiled a record as a staunch advocate of international trade and protector of the oil and gas industry. May he rest in peace.
Thank you very much. All members on that? Mr. Zine?
I have 2, Mr. President. The first one is Donald C. Wingate, passed away May 11th. Donald C. Wingate, 85 years of age, born in 1920 in Nebraska. Arrived California at age 17 with only 30 cents to his name. Was a member of the Los Angeles Police Department. He rose to captain of police, and I worked for Don Wingate over at West LA. Dedicated his life to service, serving his country in World War II. Great man, good leader, and will be sorely missed, but never forgotten. Captain Donald C. Wingate, may he rest in peace. All members on that, please. Next adjourning motions for Richard Green, passed away May 16th. Richard Green, Vice Chairman, joined Westfield in 1980 when the United States staff only included Frank and Dave Lowy. His contributions to Westfield cannot be overstated. He was a true leader of the company globally. Richard became a driving force in the growth of Westfield shopping centers, won the respect and admiration of everyone he met, was a trusted colleague whose dedication, devotion, and fierce loyalty to the company was legendary. His son Larry is now senior executive of Westfield. Richard was a great friend who was sorely missed, never forgotten. I had the opportunity to work with Rich Green. We're doing a major expansion of Westfield in my district, and there were some technical difficulties, and we met and ironed them out. And a wonderful man who sorely missed. He was in his early 60s. He passed away. Survived by his wife Anita, his son Larry, and wife Tina, daughter Tracy, and husband Gerald, and brother Marshall. Richard Green, may he rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Any other adjourning motions, colleagues? If not, Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you, colleagues. We will meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. here in John Ferraro Council Chambers, Wednesday, at our normal time, and we will see you then. This meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is adjourned.